Thank you all, and welcome to everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Dan, and I am the Director of Account Management here at Engagely. Today's Success Lab is a Tell Your Story session, and we at Engagely are beyond grateful to be partnered with our customer, Gray, Gray, and Gray, as they lead us through from vision to impact, Gray, Gray, and Gray's rewards and recognition journey. I'm especially excited for this conversation because I've lived both sides of the recognition world. I've seen how an intentional R&R program can strengthen culture, morale, and engagement. I'm happy to report that that's here at Engagely. But I've also experienced the other side. When recognition is inconsistent or missing, it can quietly erode morale and engagement over time. So, a couple of quick points on our agenda. Here's how we'll run today. Gray, Gray, and Gray will walk us through the roadmap from idea to launch to early impact. We'll be sure to address some key themes and topics that could come up in trying to stand up an R&R initiative. And of course, please drop any questions in the chat as we go. We'll either get to them in the moment or we'll address them during our Q&A section at the end. Our goal is that by the end, you should have a real-world view of what it takes to stand up a successful recognition program, including alignment, rollout, and what early wins can look like. So now, before we jump in, let's meet our co-host, Allison and Sherry. Could you please introduce yourselves, your role, and some quick context on Gray, Gray, and Gray?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for your patience as we click the correct link to join this. And thank you for inviting us, Dan and Harshita from Engagely. It's been a pleasure to work with them. I've been the Chief People Officer at Gray, Gray, and Gray, which is about a 150-person consulting, accounting, and finance firm based in Canton, Massachusetts. Yes, we did get all the snow, if you've seen us on the news. So that is something that we're enjoying very much here, working remotely, clearly today for me. But as Chief People Officer, I've been tasked with really trying to figure out how to engage a group of people who are we have everything from remote to hybrid to fully in the office. We have a variety of different business lines. We have a variety of different skill sets and levels and all those good things. And so we've been really working hard to figure out how do we incent and reward folks to have their best career possible. And when we were thinking about doing so, we figured why not continue to build on a great resource that we have already through Engagedly. And I am so grateful to work with my colleague, Sherry Ken, if you'll get to know us a little bit, but we do a lot of talking and well, I do a lot of talking and Sherry does a lot of action. And I'm very grateful to work with her alongside Gray, Gray, and Gray. So Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Kent. I am the Senior Learning and Development Specialist at Gray, Gray, and Gray, part of the amazing Human Resources team. We are a small team of 4 people. My role is to really take on continuing education and compliance, and luckily, Engagedly falls under that umbrella for me. So as Allison said, she comes in from leadership meetings to say, I want to do something like this. And then I get to come back to our Engagedly team and our amazing partner in crime, Harshita, who I say, I want to do something. Allison wants to do something. I think we can do this. And Harshita helps us make it happen. So we are incredibly lucky to have you guys in our corner as we create new, exciting things.
Love that. Yes, Harshita is on my team. We are lucky to have her as well, and so grateful that you're both experiencing the joy that is Harshita. So thank you both for the intro. Again, super excited for today's conversation. Thank you both for being here. So let's dive in. As we know, with any great program, it always starts with an idea, a vision, a why. So curious to dive into that aspect of your R&R program, Allison and Sherry. So what was happening at the organization at the time? What priorities or changes were in play that started to shape the vision of your R&R program?
No, that's a great question. And I think, as Sherry knows, when we do our team meetings, we always kind of talk about what our true north is. And one of those things has always been how do we enhance the employee experience? We are in the business of relationships, as many of us are, depending on our different fields of work. But there's not a ton of people going into accounting, right? So we always want to make sure that we've been so fortunate to hire wonderful people to cultivate their talent, and we certainly want them to remain with us to grow their career. That's good for them. That's good for us. It's good for the industry. And so, as we were trying to figure that out, as I mentioned, I've been here for about 3 years, and I would describe that my tenure so far has been planting seeds and now getting to see those things grow. And so one of the things that we've been doing is figuring out, okay, well, there's not one size fits all for all employees of what rewards and incents them, but isn't a cash usually works a pretty good way of doing that. And when people can have a pretty good line from cause and effect of here's a behavior, we want to incent you for that behavior, and now you get to opt into how you want to be rewarded for that. That's a pretty nice way of being able to do that. So we had a few different things that came up. A couple employees had said, I wish I could recognize people on my team that worked really hard during busy season. We had slightly some more antiquated ideas of should we have an employee of the month? And I was like, we're not going to do an employee of the month, but we can certainly reward everybody for ongoing contributions to the team and our bottom line. And so then that was when it was going. It was one of those perfect meetings when I think Sherry and I were on the phone with Harshita and we're like, well, we kind of want to do this like rewards thing. And Harshita many times has come up going, well, good news. We're just rolling that out. Would you like to consider working with us? And we're like, well, of course. So I don't know, Sherry, did I miss anything on that?
I think it kind of stemmed from a lot of like those little pieces of like we want to solve for X, we want to solve for this, and all of these pieces just came together in rewards and recognition so beautifully. One of our big pain points in 2025 was, as Allison said, we've got a mix, we've got hybrid, we've got fully remote, we've got fully in office, and how do we encompass that with a sort of recognition? And the fact that there is the Tango gift cards that just were an immediate selling point for us because you can do the recognition in the moment and being able to recognize in the moment and as Allison said, incent and reward that behavior. It just became such a quick win that we decided to move forward with it. And it did take time, right? The ideas kind of came from June and July of 2025 and did not get fully implemented until this past January. But everything comes with the process, and the fact that we were supported through that process, that we could create everything and solve for a lot of the pain points in 2025. It all came together so nicely.
Love that. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is that you do have to think through every part of your population, right? And especially in today's world, it is very likely that most organizations either have hybrid, fully remote, fully in office, and it's really trying to be intentional so you're not excluding a population, right? So the vision, the why really has to be thought through that all the populations are being, right, considered. Which kind of leads into my next question. I think you touched a little bit on this, Allison. On what were those signals that kind of told you that recognition needed to be more strategic versus just an afterthought?
Yeah, I think the the idea of being intentional and having a process. I think we also knowing our employee population who are very black and white with some of their thinking as what makes them so good at what they do. So to have something that is more structured instead of just saying, "Oh, I have to remember to tell someone they did a nice job." It's kind of it gives them kind of a cause and effect and a process by which they can adhere to actually doing that and giving those rewards and recognition. And so I think we were getting another piece to that as I think about is a couple years ago we rolled out something called the relationship manager function, and that is folks that are a little more senior giving direct oversight. If you're not familiar with professional services, oftentimes you don't actually have like a manager that you report to every week, and that as someone who came from industry, I was blown away by that fact. So we put together the relationship manager function. But then, as part of that, it's how do you build in the practice of telling people they do a good job? So often we forget that those words go a long way, and those words plus, a little couple of points that can be added it to go to Amazon or to cash in for some grocery or whatever you'd like to treat yourself to. I hope it's not treating yourself to groceries, but that's neither here nor there. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it was something that signaled to us that we needed to put something more in place other than just hoping someone would give feedback to someone else.
Yeah, love that. I love the word of intentionality, being intentional. And I think that really lends itself to building anything within an organization. I've been in this space for about 10 years now. Like every process is probably going to fail or not land if there isn't that intentionality behind it. Like, what are we trying to accomplish here, right? So thank you both for sharing your why and your vision. And I think we can all agree that the vision is the starting point, right? From there, it's really about the execution and building the roadmap to how do we actually get this to stick within the organization. So let's move on to building alignment and gaining that executive support. How did you introduce this idea internally? What was that first conversation like?
So I can talk from an ideas, and then I know my partner in crime, Sherry, does the all the actual hard work. But one of the things I was sharing with our partner group was saying, you know, it, let's look at additional ways to incent people, right? So some people want just purely, some people want to have the accolades that are like, here's an email or here's an email from a client, something along those lines. But are we meeting people where they are of trying to find a kind of a broader brush from with which to give the opportunity for recognition? And so that's where we kind of started thinking about this. And then the real bonus was that it's not like we had to go out and find another system to use, right? So because so often you have a bright idea, and many people have gone to different conferences and said, "Oh, good, now they're going to sell you on X product or platform that you now need to implement here." Well, we didn't have to do that with Engagedly, and I think that was what was such an easy sell. It was kind of like, well, why wouldn't we try this? And my kind of philosophy on most things, and Sherry will know this, is why not try? Worst case scenario, we go, you know what, this isn't what worked for best for our employee group, and so let's pivot. But at least we've now said we've tried to solve a problem. We have used the resources available to us, and let's see how this goes. And I think, that it was hard to say no to that. It was like, oh, so we don't want to incent and reward and recognize our talent with an existing platform. It was like, oh yeah, no, that sounds pretty good. So it was a pretty easy sell to get to that point. And I think at some point later we'll talk about kind of the implementation and utilization of the platform. But from an initial onset of the conversation and interest in doing it, it was a pretty easy sell.
Yeah. I think one key standout there, and I've seen this firsthand, is once you say, oh, we need money, that kind of makes the conversation harder. So I think the takeaway there is think about the tools that you already have access to, because that can really help accelerate any program right off the bat and maybe gain more buy-in so that we can expand to other tools if needed. Um, so curious to know what stakeholders were part of this initial alignment conversation. Did you have to go to different departments, different figureheads into those departments? Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate in my role as CPO is that I work very regularly with our partner group. And so again, I hadn't worked with such a kind of a setup before, but I work with the managing partner regularly, the COO, and the department heads of our various departments. And I have the relationship with them at this stage that was kind of like, hey, we want to try this thing. Here's how it works. It impacts you not really, it doesn't impact you negatively in any way, shape, or form, but there's a lot of upside to that. You win. And they were like, all right, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And so I think the nature of our conversations and our relationship has been there is a trust that I've been at the organization long enough. They have trust in my team as well that says, you know, if you think this is a good idea, let's go try it out. And so it wasn't this huge ask. It wasn't this uphill battle necessarily. It was more so of, all right, everything else you guys have been trying to put out there has worked pretty well and building on it. We see where you're going with this. Let's try it out. So, uh,
Great. Yeah, I think there's a lot of data out there that supports that recognition is a massive driver of turnover and or retention. So I love that. I mean, ideally, that conversation is somewhat easy when it's trying to get executive buy-in, but it sounds like you were coming from a place of our employees are actually wanting this, right?
yeah,
So we do want to give them what they're asking for. We just got to think about the how
yeah,
and how do we actually roll this out in our organization.
I
absolutely.
think
Oh, sorry, Rika, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think a lot of it is we had some small pieces of these processes already kind of floating where we wanted to integrate them into one kind of program. It was, as Allison said, kind of an easy sell. And it was more of a like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to try to take this process and bring it together with that. And that helps with the buy-in when you have the pieces already and you can bring it all together into a platform that people already know and already utilize. And that was a big help in it, is that everyone already has a nice relationship with Engagedly because we do already utilize it in some ways. So this was just one more piece to say, hey, we're bringing it all together.
Love that, Sherry. And that's a perfect transition to what I'm sure many people here are curious about, and that's what you actually built or are building and how you rolled it out. So let's dive into bringing the program to life. I think the first step here for both of you is really understanding your rollout. What comms did you use and what did you ask of leaders and managers? Because I think they are integral to any R&R program. So curious to know how you attack that.
Thanks, Allison. I did a lot of the background work. As we said, this kind of came out mid-year in June and July, and then starting to create the processes and implementation. It started with kind of getting those department heads on board in terms of people who would be affected by the new program. So like our internal accounting manager, I met with her early on to work out budget, to work out processes and kind of take what processes we did have or kind of lack thereof. We had some gift cards kind of floating and they were very, it wasn't a streamlined process yet. So to take this and say, hey, we can streamline this process, we can build reporting into this process, and working closely with Harshita to model those reports to see what they would look like. That was really helpful in that. And so in September and October, with an idea of maybe even doing a soft rollout in November, we were looking at that and then realized budgeting wise, anniversary acknowledgements, things like that. We were like, maybe this isn't the best idea with performance reviews. And so the timeline did keep getting moved, but meeting with the marketing team to work on the best ways to promote, the best ways to engage our team, the best ways to talk about it. And work on resources. So we were able to create some resources before we did the rollout in January and run those by our chief operating officer, right? Get his buy-in because he is a big advocate for Engagedly. He's a big advocate for recognition. And so getting him to ask questions, I did a training with him specifically and our office manager to say like, hey, what makes sense about this? What questions do you have? As Allison said, we're in a busy season right now, being in accounting. It's, we're heading into March. It's a very busy time. So we're trying not to push too hard, but we do have everything kind of slowly rolling out and accessible for people to be able to see. So a lot of the comms were working closely with our marketing team, getting the processes in place the months ahead of the rollout. But then January came and we had a really successful launch of the new program. And so far, feedback has been positive.
I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, what I heard there quickly was another lens of executive support, right? Your CMO, you
Yes.
said, supporting you in the comms and the resources, which is huge. And you started to touch on this a bit, Sherry, but curious to dive in a bit deeper on Engagely and the capabilities that you feel like have supported or implementation or just helping build momentum.
Yeah, I mean, Harshita and the support team have just been there at every turn to answer my questions. If the language didn't look quite right in a post, or I wasn't able to pull the right report, they were there immediately with a solution within, an hour to 2 hours. It was amazing. And within 12 hours, I would have kind of a walkthrough, a check-in, whatever it may be. So the fact that the Engagedly team was there every step of the way, answering my questions, helping me understand the platform, I never felt like I was lost. I talked to Harshita in January because we both came off like we had a break right around the holidays. You guys had a break around the holidays. And I was like, I was so worried that it wouldn't roll out, that it wouldn't launch. And then I realized everything's fixable, right? We have this amazing team. We have this amazing group. Um, Everything can be fixed. It's not a big deal. As Allison said, like, why not try, right? We can always backtrack a little. We can always fix something. And the fact that your team at Engagedly has proven that time and time again, I feel like there's always a solution to whatever challenge we're walking into.
Love that. And one key thing that I do want to double tap that I heard from you is that it sounds like so far you've gotten some positive feedback.
Yes, very much so.
Amazing. Which I think is a testament to how powerful an R&R program can be. Which I want to use this moment to pull the audience into the conversation. So in the chat, if you're comfortable sharing, and more so for those that have been thinking about standing up an R&R program, what's your biggest rollout concern? Is it buy-in? Is it adoption? Is it comms? Is it measurement? Is it all of the above? Is it something else? Again, if you're comfortable sharing, please drop those in the chat. Curious to just see what's going through everyone's head. Amazing. So let's move over to some early momentum, right? Now that the program is taking shape, it's coming to life. Let's talk about some early wins and initial impact that we're seeing. So, what were the first participation or engagement signals that told both of you, like, hey, this is landing, this is actually starting to work?
So one of the things I'll share is that it was really smart of Sherry to think about let me back up a little. So we do annual anniversary recognition. Before we were doing paper cards, gift cards that were being sent out in the mail, which is great. They were signed. It was wonderful. However, you ran into people moved, people, things got lost or stolen, all the kind of good things. And Sherry was like, well, why don't we use this platform to automate that process? And so so now it's not that you take away the human error piece of it, we take away any kind of worry about things getting stolen. Plus, you get to customize what someone gets to use their gift card for. And I think being able to do that, and that happened right away, and is part of the initial rollout, that was a huge win because it got people into the system, got people comfortable with the fact that, oh, you could actually exchange these were real dollars, this actually was something. And we also do gift certificates to recognize for folks if they have a baby or they get married, and we've been able to use the platform to do that as well. So I think those two things allowed us to gain confidence with folks that the system was good, it made sense, it was easy, it was user friendly, all of those good things. And I see that a lot of comments about momentum in the chat. And I mean, if I had $1 for every time I was either worried about that or thought about that or tried to change that, I have a very nice island somewhere, I'm sure, because I think especially as a practitioners, we're always trying to figure out how we get folks to engage with our systems, our practices, and anything we're changing. And I think my philosophy has been like, let's chip away at it and not expect that every single employee logs in every single day to give, and using it in such an exhaustive way right away. But two things. One, we can't say we don't have it, right? We can say we've responded to employee needs, we've responded to things that we believe are important for our employee experience, and we're giving us a way of solving for that. And let's have confidence that over time, more and more people will use the system and get into that because, as I was mentioning, because we go over to use it for the anniversary, we go over to use it for recognition things on kind of life events. So I think there's a level of confidence, but also patience, because if there's something I've learned in my tenure in HR has been there's no magic wand. There's nothing that just unless the thing is like click this button and you get $100,000. Usually people aren't responding, immediately to your emails or your ideas. And so knowing that, let's try to just chip away at it. And when people say, "Gosh, I wish there was a way to tell Sherry what an awesome job she did," and we remind them, well, there actually is, and here's how we're going to be able to see that. So, Sherry, I don't want to speak for you or any of your other thoughts about early wins.
Yeah, I think last week having a director kind of reach out to Allison and say like, "Hey, I want to acknowledge these two people on my team what's the best way to do that? They went above and beyond with this client, and Allison was like, "Oh, amazing! We actually have an app for that." And to be able to very quickly, again, in the moment, being able to recognize, the director said, "Hey, I want to recognize them." And we said, "Hey, okay, how much?" And we were able to post that recognition. The entire firm was able to see it. These two amazing team members who were actually at a client in South Carolina. I don't even remember where they were, but they were able to be recognized in that moment, both by the director and with a gift card. And so to be able to do that immediately, I think the director was happy. The employees were happy. I got some great thank you notes from them. So, I think that seeing those use cases within the first 6 weeks of rolling this out already shows that we're on the right path.
Yeah, that to me sounds like a really meaningful moment, especially when it comes from a director, right? Because we want to be leading from the front, right? You want your managers, directors, even C-suite to be championing the program, not just because of check the box, but it's because we do want to reward meaningful work at the organization. And the fact that you heard that those two employees were also really grateful, like that goes a long way. I feel like we covered it, but just to maybe go a bit deeper on this question, like, did anything surprise you about how managers and or employees have reacted to the program?
I don't think for me, not so much. I think we are pretty early into it, and like we mentioned before, our timing is um, challenging just because we have people who are pulled in so many different directions with the April 15th and March 15th and April 30th deadlines. So I think where my excitement really is going to be is that when we have these one-off cases that people do want to recognize folks in real time, and instead of us ordering gift cards and having to do this thing, we can actually reward them right then. And I think that's going to be a big win because we just had that example last week, and I think there's going to be more of those that come over the next couple months here while we work through this really busy time of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to summarize this section, I think there's two things here. It's patience and consistency, right? Like as you mentioned, you are early on in your journey with R&R, right? We're 6 weeks, maybe 2 months in, and we're seeing those little pockets of positivity and well received, right? But it may not be a daily thing with R&R, right? Because you said anniversaries, you said birthdays, you said like really important, meaningful projects. Those don't happen every day. Maybe they do, and that's a stressful life, but hopefully they don't. But it's just being consistent, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to accomplish here is behavior change, right? It's really getting everyone to understand like rewards and recognition matter. I'm a director, I'm a leader, I have to lean in here. And it also gives your employees sort of that green light to say, I can reward Allison, I can reward Sherry. So patience and consistency, I think, are key for any program, but more so for R&R. Now I want to take us to our final stop on this journey. And like zooming out, let's finish talking about where you want this to go long term, right? So looking ahead, 1, 2, maybe 3 year vision. In the future, what does success look like for Gray, Gray, and Gray in this arena?
I think short-term success for me is that we have folks regularly going into the platform to click on that button of saying, "Gosh, I had a great interaction with so and so did great at a client, and here's some points." And we're doing more spot recognition for things that don't have to be these huge projects because I think those ones are the ones that are really easy to recognize, but it's more of the who shows up in these quiet moments and giving them a platform to do that. I think the other piece that I would like to see longer term is as we see kind of the cause and effect of rewarding folks for the behaviors we want to see, how can we continue to adapt this platform to customize to those needs? So if that's business development, if it's that's cross-selling, if it's one-on-one coaching and really making sure folks are really working through their career development, we want to recognize folks who are helping folks to do that. How can we use this platform to be able to um, to reward those behaviors and then seeing how that does drive change in those behaviors to like you were saying, Dan. And so I think that's kind of the longer term vision. I think um, I would love it for folks to feel heard and seen for both the contributions that they make and then seen by the other folks had an opportunity to recognize them for that work. And if people could say, come away, starting this year, I started something called Coffee and Conversations, and I'm trying to meet with every employee at least once throughout the year to better understand their employee experience. And so one of the things I always talk to them is like, do you feel recognized and rewarded? And I want to make sure that that's something that the response is an automatic yes to that. And I think this is going to really help us to be able to facilitate that. And that would be successful in the next couple of years for me to see and hear.
I think one piece that I heard there is that there is an evolution to an R&R program, right? Because you start with the big vision. It's just we want people to be recognized and heard and feel seen. But I think you mentioned like there could be different use cases for different departments based off of how they do work. And that could be the additional layer, right? Maybe in motivating the leaders of those departments to like, hey, come up with your own strategy on how we can implement it into our R&R broader strategy. And I think that's just a natural evolution. I think it's easier said than done. You just kind of have to start, right? Like get that adoption, get that buy-in, and it's going to evolve over time. So to close out this section, what outcomes are you hoping to drive long term, and how will you know? Maybe you don't, and it's okay if you don't, but how will you know that you're getting there?
Jerry, do you have a perspective before I?
I just think, like Allison said, getting people, seeing people utilizing, whether it's the feedback option, the rewards, just seeing a little bit more usage, I would feel successful, seeing that social feed really light up with that recognition. I think, building out our badges, building out these different pieces that we haven't done yet, because we did start with kind of the processes that we've had and we wanted to focus on being successful with those, but seeing everything kind of build into something that gamifies things that we're doing every day, gets people excited and feeling like they are heard and they are recognized. I think that that's going to be feeling successful for me.
Yeah, I agree with all that that Sherry's and it mentioning, and I think the cherry on top would be, and I know you mentioned this before, Dan, is that it comes from the top. That the people who are going into the system are not just from the staff or supervisor level, that they are partners, they're directors, and they're going in and using that and kind of amplifying that behavior. Because one of the things that I've heard, and we talked a little bit about it before, some in a slight way, is when people know it's okay to be the one recognizing others, that drives that behavior. So if I know that it's very cool that I sent $5 points to so and so because I know that like they did such a great job, and that's a behavior that's recognized, approved, and positively reinforced by more senior folks, I think we'll have more and more folks do that. So that's just going to take some time, just because it's so new. But that would be a huge drive indicator of success in my eyes, was that we have folks across levels and tenures using the system, recognizing people again at all different levels as well.
Yeah. I hope that for both of you. I hope to see
Me
that.
too. Me
Yes,
too.
that'd be amazing. Great. Well, we've reached the end point of our journey. Amazing. Thank you both for sharing your early journey on rewards and recognition. We have about 10 to 15 minutes left for Q&A. So I think now, audience, is the time that if you've been holding on to a question, please drop it in the chat. And we'll tackle them as we go. I do have one here, and it is, what is the best way to launch a reward program? Do you offer one-on-one training when a company wants to launch a reward program? That might be to me. I don't know, but is that to you?
Well,
Um,
we could
Go
speak to
ahead.
that from our because
Yeah.
we actually did do so. No, we did not. Sherry did job aids and worked closely with marketing, as we mentioned, to do some screenshots to show just really how easy it was. So we use Microsoft Teams. We have platforms that kind of to advertise that. We wanted to kind of take out the question of how easy it is to click around. So Sherry did that. And then she mentioned also that she had mentioned met one-on-one with our COO to give some insights. And we've offered that up to the rest of the partner group as well, because again, like I was just saying, that senior group we wanted to make it really easy for them to go into the systems, take out any question of them doing that or not. Oh, and so Sherry, did I miss anything?
Um, No, I would say like the one-on-one training really came from our site administrator, right? From our Engagedly administrator, Harshita. She and the support team trained me, and I then was able to create resource guides specific to our rewards platform. So utilizing your team at Engagedly to ask the questions, get the resources you need, and then I worked with my marketing team to create resource guides, quick access. Engagedly also provided some great video tutorials just in terms of how to utilize Tango because I wasn't in the system yet to grab that. So just utilizing your Engagedly team. Harshita trained me. I was then able to go and train our C-suite and have offered up kind of 15 to 20-minute trainings for partners as well so that we can start modeling that from the top down.
That's great. We have another question, and you may have not gotten here, but maybe you have some initial thoughts. And that's, would you be able to share some strategies for implementing recognition and badges to drive behavior change in an organization that doesn't have a budget for rewards?
Well, so I guess part one of the question from like a badges. So Sherry and I did a lot of brainstorming about, things we almost that people just need to do, like entering goals, and making sure that they're kind of compliant in that, and there's a way of recognizing that. We also did, so we have a couple of employee resource groups, and we did badges for if you're part of the charitable board or diversity, equity, inclusion committee, just to have kind of that badge to show that you're kind of participating in that way. I think the budget piece is really tough because it's, I guess it's the question is depending on the culture of your organization of how much do visible representations of validation to use as many words as possible, how that goes for that department, or they're going, well, okay, that's great, thanks for the shiny badge that has a trophy on it, but I want $20 to show that put your money where your mouth is. So I guess I'm not I think it's Jill there is, I think it's a big culture piece to that of how does your employee population best get are best motivated, and if you have an organization that talks a lot about accolades and recognizes that in different ways, I think it could be really successful if those badges essentially mean something that maybe it's not that you get money when you get a badge, but if you have an internal promotion system or a way of recognizing that, even more so of saying, wow, we had 25 people who were top producers this quarter, and you'll see that badge on their social feed. I think that could be something that would be helpful too.
I know Engagedly also has the option of, so we talked a lot about gift cards and the Tango platform, but there's also an option for kind of your own company pieces. So I've worked with marketing. We're working on rolling out swag as an option to redeem your points. We're working out. So maybe Harshita had given me the idea of a lunch with the COO and using that as, so it doesn't have to be monetary, it can be an experience as well, and the rewards platform allows for that. So maybe getting a little creative if you don't have the budget for it. And we utilized a budget that we already had in place for anniversaries, for life events, and pieces like that. But if that isn't in the cards for the company, getting creative and finding experiences or other things that you can trade in for rewards, that might be another option.
We do have another question here, and I'm curious to get your perspectives because, again, I do want to anchor on the fact that we are 2 months in, maybe right, 10 weeks in, but let's just put ourselves in the seat on what happens when employees do lose momentum. For example, let's say you roll rewards out and people are excited, but then it dies down. Any thoughts to how we can maybe try to re-engage and build that momentum back up?
Yeah, I wonder if it's a matter, kind of building what Sherry just said, is revamping what the rewards can be. So, is there a new experience? In a previous life, I used a different platform, and we would do kind of, oh, now this is available to you, or some version of that. I think you could try to continue to talk about their success stories of, wow, it was so nice that 25% of our population recognized peers this quarter. Can we get it up to 40% or some kind of, if again, depending on your culture, depending on the population that you're working with, I think there's different ways. So incentivize or maybe gamifying it. Maybe it's a matter of rolling out new rewards. Maybe it's a matter of senior leadership talking it up even more so. Or again, that leading from the top, I think really helps a lot.
I think one thing I would add there is, identifying groups that are doing well and have maintained that momentum and just really understand from them, like, why is this still important to you? Like, why is it still so easy for you? Because that could help illuminate different aspects of like, oh, we're not looking at it. And it can also maybe be it's department by department, right? Because the engineering team might be different than the account executive team. They just work differently. So it could be just tweaking the programs to specific groups. All right, final call for any last minute questions. No? Going once, twice, sold. Okay. We have reached the end of our Success Lab. So first, I want to say a massive thank you to both Allison and Sherry. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Really, really appreciate it. Really insightful. For those already running recognition, I hope this reinforced that you're on the right track. Stay the course, stay patient, and get buy-in from all levels. For those newer to this, the goal isn't perfection. It's starting with a clear why, aligning with the right stakeholders, and creating early wins that you can build on. As a possible next step for those here, if you want help turning your vision into a rollout plan inside Engagely, reach out to your dedicated solutions consultant or account manager, and we'll absolutely help you get moving. And with that said, thank you to everyone that joined. We hope that you found today's session insightful, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of your week. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.